This industry started way, way back from Grandpa years ago, roughly 70 years ago, 65, 70 years ago. His sons worked for him the way I understood it, and then it generated on to us. And that's kind of how the business got started.
His older brother worked for the USDA, and Daddy was just a farmer. So they decided to log a little bit. In 1956, Uncle Stewart bought a new truck, and Daddy still had the tractor and the hands and the power saw. Cut a lot of individual timber, pine and hardwood, private tracks, neighbors around, mostly.
He was a very successful man, run a very good business, tight business. What he said, you could take it to the bank. He done a real good job, I mean.
They done good, they made a good living. I never did hear them complain, you know.
Papa had 3 sons. It was Curtis, Jimmy, and Proby. Jimmy's my father.
I'd say 64 or 5, I started with Daddy full time. But the year Jimmy finished coal in, we got a first knuckle boom loader. He run the loader. We done had a skidder maybe a year or 2 before. I drove the skidder. First, Daddy drove the truck.
They was all together starting, and then Proby and Daddy went out on their own, ventured on their own. When I was 10 years old, I went to the woods, me and my cousin, and we had to sit in a work truck. I sat there and watched everything. It was very amazing. And it still amazes me today, and I've been in business roughly 25 years, and it still amazes me day in, day out to watch it. When I first started out there with Daddy working, I started out running a power saw, limbing up trees in the bunching grounds, what we call it. And I wasn't allowed to do nothing at that time, but I started worrying Daddy after I'd been out there a little while. He started at lunchtime when everybody would get off a main like a loader or a skidder. I would have 30 minutes. I'd just leave my lunch break and try to go learn how to do this. I started driving a skidder is what I first started. And after about 2 years, eventually that's what I started doing, and out there with them was driving a skidder. I graduated from the power saw to the skidder. Which I was glad. When I first started driving a skidder, it was an open cab. It had screens around it for protection to where no limb or something could slap you. You was basically in like jail. But it was so much better than out in the beaming sun. I mean, it'd be 100 degrees, and we would start at daylight and deliberately work to 5 o'clock every day. And I mean, take 30 minutes for dinner if you took a dinner break.
In the wintertime, before we got without the cab on it, you had sometime every other drag, you had to stop and warm your feet and hands, especially if it was in the 20s, you know, and 30s. And now you can sit in there in a short sleeve shirt after you got the cab. That's the difference it made. And then you got the air, it's comfortable. It's just like sitting in a recliner at the house.
One morning we run them open cab stuff. I can remember it being 17 degrees, and you would deliberately near about freeze to death. I mean, it was just unreal. I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years after that, then they come along with a enclosed cab, And with air conditioned heat and all that, we thought we'd just die and went to heaven when that got there.
It ain't as much fun as it used to be back when me and Daddy and Jimmy and Proby was doing it, and we could sit down on a tree and drink some coffee and talk a while. Now you got to be getting it.
When I lived at home with Daddy and him in his business, people was calling wanting to work, and I mean hard work. I mean, get out there and run a power saw all day in the beaming sun. I can't hardly find somebody to sit in an air-conditioned machine. The hours is even shorter of what we work today than it was when I worked 30 years ago with Daddy. It's just gotten actually a lot easier now, and I can't even find no help. And it's way easier. They got air conditioning, heating, radio, transportation back and forth to the job. Just finding good quality help, you just can't find none hardly. Today's society just is not like it was 30 years ago.
And all that's made a big difference too. High diesel prices and all this stuff. Cutters and stuff's $300,000, and we bought them for $50 when I started.
The inflation of everything is coming up, but our pay is basically staying right here. Everything's going up. Labor's going up. Every piece of equipment I got has went up. It goes up every year, 10 to 15%, like I said. And that's fixing to be the biggest challenge if we don't stay up to date on our rates and get them up. But yes, I enjoy it today. I would have to say just as much as I did the day I went in. The reason I say that, back then it was always a worry, am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? Well, I've been in now for 25 years. I'm settled, in pretty good shape, financial shape. I enjoy it just as much today as I did 25 years ago, or 30 years ago when I worked with Daddy. It's just as good today as it was then.
Well, I just remember all the good times. We always got along. We never fussed, and on our job, there wasn't no never cussing and fussing. If we wanted to sit down on the tree and talk about something and drink some coffee, we could, and it was just a pleasure, to work together. We always got along so good. Never had a falling out as I can remember over the years in the woods. Part Brian got, I still help him. I still run the cutter for it. And I was 78 yesterday.